Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community.
Lord, I prayed hard. Please teach me how to control my anger and let go of revenge. Just not before I beat the crap out of my wife's lover. See, my childhood was a mess of mixed messages. My mom's side, Sicilian. My grandma used to say, "You mess with us, we mess you up twice as hard." Meanwhile, my dad's side were Quakers, peaceful, turn-the-other cheek types. My grandma on that side preached forgiveness and pacifism. So yeah, you can imagine how confused I've been my whole life about how to handle betrayal. My name's Tim. I was the good kid, followed every rule. Heck, I was even a choir boy at one point. Then Kathy happened. We met in high school. She was wild, reckless, didn't follow a single rule, and I was hooked. She dragged me into her world of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I didn't complain. She had me wrapped around her finger. As long as she kept being with me, I would have done anything. I never talked about our relationship, but everyone knew. I mean, how could they not? She was a force of nature. Everything changed the day she got arrested for stealing a red Corvette with some guy who turned out to be her sister Serena's husband. Yeah, Kathy slept with her own brother-in-law. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the only one in her bed. I was crushed. I loved her. And the worst part, I'd always secretly had a thing for Serena, her older sister. Serena was elegant, classy, the complete opposite of Kathy's chaos. Anyway, Kathy's lawyer made a deal. If she joined the army, the charges would vanish. So off she went. And me? I was left alone, spinning. When it came to love, I only had two rules. I wanted a woman who was passionate, but only for me. That's a rare combo, turns out. Passionate women weren't faithful, and faithful women, well, they weren't exciting. Life moved on, but nothing felt the same after Kathy. I dated, sure. I'm not a saint. I even thought about becoming a priest once when I was 13 and caught a Bing Crosby movie on TV. That feeling lasted about an hour. Eventually, I became a high school science teacher at a fancy private school. I like the structure. I like the facts. Water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a fact. Science doesn't lie. Unlike people. My love life did. Most women lost interest when they found out I was just a teacher. They were looking for doctors, lawyers, hell, even an Indian chief. But I wasn't heartbroken. Compared to Kathy, everyone else felt dull. Then came my 7th high school reunion. It wasn't official, just a wedding of a friend that half our class showed up to. I was on my 3rd bourbon when I saw her. Kathy, she looked like a damn Vegas showgirl. And yeah, you're wondering how I know what a Vegas showgirl looks like. I plead the 5th. What happens in Vegas? Anyway, she walked straight up to me. No words, just wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me on the cheek. And that was it. Game, set, met. She had me again. Standing next to her was this tall, sharp Marine in full dress uniform. "Tim, meet my husband, Hank." I stammered. "Wait, I thought you were in the army?" "I was," she said. "Guess this is a mixed marriage." Hank was actually a great guy. We bonded over country music and our mutual heartbreak, the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 months later, he was killed in Iraq. 2 years later, Kathy and I got married. Her sister Serena didn't come to the wedding. In fact, she never spoke to Kathy again. Can't say I blame her. I'd see Serena once or twice a year at educator seminars. She worked at another school. We'd have lunch. No flirting, but there was definitely chemistry. She never brought up Kathy, and I never mentioned her. When I asked why she never remarried, she told me raising 2 daughters left no time for dating. But I always wondered, what if I had asked her out back then? Kathy and I had 3 amazing years. But you can only suppress who you are for so long. Her wild side, it came back. I didn't notice it right away, but our marriage was done the second it did. I loved science because it gave me certainty. Life didn't. One Monday around 10 a.m., Kathy left to run errands after her shower. She'd come back hours later and take another shower. She always took great care of her long black hair, pride and joy. Something fell off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew. I asked her if anything was wrong. She said everything was perfect. Of course she did. She was an artist, actually pretty good. Local galleries showed her work. Every week, she met up with other artists. I wasn't invited, I didn't get art. But she kept talking about Derek, one of the other artists. She practically swooned whenever she mentioned him. That's when my radar started pinging. I wasn't tech-savvy enough to set up surveillance, but every fiber of me knew something was up. I didn't have the cash to hire a private investigator. But the Sicilian in me, he had a plan. Crazy one. I grabbed a big blanket and laid it out in the back seat of my wife's Volvo wagon. Then I parked my own beat-up Toyota, snuck back, and hid under that blanket like a lunatic with a broken heart. In one hand, I clutched a ratcheting tie-down strap. In the other, permanent Sharpie. Next to me, a battery-powered beard trimmer. Yeah, it was that kind of plan. I figured when she got in the car with her lover, I'd pop up from the floor like a vengeful jack-in-the-box, wrap the strap around his neck, and yank it back into the headrest. Right cheater across his smug face. Then shear off my wife's long, shiny black hair, like the French did to traitorous women after World War II. It would have been satisfying. But I knew how that story ended, with me in jail. So I dropped that plan. It broke my heart. It was a damn good one. Except for the felony part. My Quaker grandma would have been proud I walked away from it. The Sicilian side, not so much. Next plan, more subtle, still brutal. I bought a can of Drano, a water bottle, and a paintbrush. I was going to paint the outside door handles of her car with it, just enough to ruin their hands. They were artists after all. I thought it was poetic. But again, I couldn't do it. It was too cruel, even if they deserved it. I hated myself for backing down, felt like a spineless fool. Sicilian grandma would have called me a coward. She probably wasn't wrong. Then came another idea, darker, more twisted. I'd spike her tea with Ambien right before her art meetup, wait for it to kick in. Then I'd storm in, find them naked, and claim I thought she was being assaulted. Beat the guy senseless with a bat. Seemed perfect, except I'd never hit anyone in my life. And I wasn't about to start now, even with rage eating me alive. I felt like I was going insane, torn between revenge and peace, Sicilian and Quaker, like drinking poison and expecting them to die. Then, one night, the phone rang. It was Serena, Kathy's sister. She wanted to meet, said it was important. I dressed sharp, the best I'd looked in a year. Serena had always been stunning, but that morning at IHOP, she looked like a dream. She told me she'd seen Kathy at an art gallery, leaving arm in arm with some guy. She followed them, got pictures of them checking into a cheap motel. Serena had been waiting for this day, her own revenge. After all, Kathy stole her husband years ago. I don't know what came over me, maybe the years of hurt, maybe the chemistry, but I kissed her. And she kissed me back, right there in that booth, like we were kids again. The manager even came over and joked we should get a room. So we did. And what happened in Serena's apartment over the next 3 hours? Let's just say I finally understood what real love felt like. Turns out I married the wrong sister. Serena and I stayed up talking all night. She told me she always thought I was too good for Kathy, even back in high school. But she was married and I was taken. Life got in the way. Until now. The next day, we walked into my house and told Kathy everything. Thanked her, actually. Told her the divorce attorney was already hired. She lost it, screamed that our revenge wouldn't last. She was wrong. 3 months later, her lover dumped her. Turns out paying bills, doing chores, and facing real life isn't as sexy as sneaking around while your husband foots the mortgage. Last I heard, she was working part-time at an art supply store, making just over minimum wage. Serena and I, we built a beautiful life. I adopted her daughters. We had 3 kids of our own and 2 grandchildren before she passed away from a heart attack 35 years later. She was the love of my life. Looking back, I'm so glad I never followed through on all those crazy revenge fantasies. I found a better one, marrying Serena, loving her, living well, and letting time do its thing. My Sicilian side calls it justice. My Quaker side, peace. And now I know the truth. Being happy really is the best revenge. Now for the second story. I'm Tony, my friend Gary, and I rented an apartment on a nude beach in Malibu for it. Week 1 summer while we were 17 years old, just before our freshman year in college began. It was Gary's idea to cheer me up because I had just gone through a bad breakup when I learned that my girlfriend since throughout high school cheated on me. She had been the only girl I'd ever dated. I wasn't exactly a ladies' man because I was too shy. When I was going steady in high school, other girls flirted with me, but I would never cheat on my then girlfriend. I'm a one-woman man. I've been told that I'm handsome. I wouldn't say that, but neither would I argue with the girls who told me that. Gary and I had both on the gymnastics team in high school. We also worked out with weights, and were pretty muscular. Our next door neighbor at the beach was an adorable, but precocious blonde-haired, 13-year-old girl named Lisa. She welcomed us to the neighborhood and introduced us to our neighbors. She was an absolute doll with an amazing personality for someone so young. She and her family had moved to Malibu from Sweden 2 weeks before, and she had a thick Swedish accent. One night, her parents invited us for dinner, and I didn't know if Lisa was just her normal, gregarious self or was seriously flirting with me. Finally, her father took me aside and said that I was all Lisa talked about since we moved in. He said she had an amazing crush on me. Lisa was the most beautiful girl I'd ever met or ever to take an interest in me, and though by now I had an enormous crush on her as well. It was not as strong as my moral compass, which prevented me from acting on it. Because of her age, my desire to remain out of prison was also a factor, though. Some courts won't prosecute the man if he's less than 5 years older than the girl. Still, I didn't think it would be. Right. The time we spent together on the beach talking every day was the high point of my summer. She was surprised that I too was a fan of the musical group ABBA, and we sat on the beach singing their songs. We sang Waterloo knowing my fate is to be with you, and she held my hand. It was a cruel joke on my heart that she was so young. One day, Gary and I were on the beach in front of our rental with Lisa and her parents. Lisa and I looked at one another with puppy dog eyes as we sat on the beach with others from the building singing oldies rock and roll songs while Gary played his guitar. Lisa sang the ancient Paul Anka song Diana, about a boy in love with a much older girl. Lisa changed the lyrics to Anthony, I'm so young and you're so old. I was getting worked up and thought my Johnson would burst through my swim trunks. Then, to escape the hot sun and my worked up passion, Gary and I stuck our toes in the ocean and realized that the water was too cold for us. So we walked back to our blanket. Lisa's parents were used to swimming in cold Swedish waters and laughed at us as they ran into the ocean, while Lisa applied suntan lotion to herself. Lisa was very fair-skinned and would easily burn. She handed me a tube and asked me to apply it to her back, which I started to do. It was the most erotic and also happiest moment of my life, and I had to breathe deeply to remain calm. Then she turned to face me, took off the top of her bikini as she pointed to her upper body and said, would you like to rub some lotion on these? Then she grabbed my hand and tried to place it on her upper body. This isn't right, I said, and I pulled my hand away, but Lisa pointed to my excitement and said my body admitted how I really felt about her. Gary and I didn't say a word. We just ran away into the freezing ocean and swam out to Lisa's parents, referring to Lisa's age and a potential prison term. I said to Gary, 13 will get you 20. He nodded in agreement. We asked Lisa's parents to accompany us back to the beach, which they reluctantly did. Lisa was still topless. Her parents said nothing about her being naked from the waist up. Her mother turned to me as she also removed her top. She and her daughter laughed at how uncomfortable Gary and I were and called us prudes. Lisa smiled at me and said that someday after we were married, I'd see and feel her all the time. Gary and I quickly left the beach, never to return during the rest of our week. I never forgot about Lisa and compared every girl I dated to her, and Lisa always won. I was obsessed with her, but intentionally stayed away from her. If she had been of legal age, I would have asked her to marry me on the spot. I graduated college with a BA, then continued for another 2 years for my master's in accountancy and was hired by an accounting firm in Malibu. One night, after working late, I stopped at a local pizza joint where my gorgeous waitress sat on my lap and kissed me on my lips. It was the greatest kiss of my life. Tony, the waitress said with a Swedish accent. I waited a lot of years for that kiss, but it was worth it. I took a long look at this girl on my lap, and then I recognized her. It was Lisa. Lisa, I need to see your driver's license. I sputtered out in a breathless request. Don't worry, I'm legal now, she responded, and again kissed me. I believe you, but I need to see your ID. Lisa fished into her back pocket, pulled out her wallet, and handed me her license. She had turned 18 a week earlier. I put my arms around her and kissed her again. How old are you now, Tony? She asked, and I responded, 23. We dated for a month before Lisa's parents moved back to Sweden, and then Lisa moved in with me. I was never so happy in my life. Lisa was an absolute dream in the bedroom, but nightmare in the kitchen. I didn't care because I loved to cook. My mother died when I was young, and my dad and I had to learn to cook. Even though Lisa was younger than I was, she mothered me. Lisa attended Santa Monica College. She wanted to be a nurse. Life was good. Noah was great. Imagine coming home from work every day and being attacked by a gorgeous, amorous, uninhibited Swedish blonde. My colleagues at work laughed at me because I had a perpetual smile at work and something else perpetual at home. We spoke about having a child in Another 2 or 3 years after we saved. Some more money. Some mornings when I awoke, I was afraid to open my eyes and discover that this was all a dream. But if it was a dream, it was a dream that came true. It was no dream. No dream could ever be this wonderful. One night, after leaving a restaurant with my wife, Gary and his wife, a drunk driver, careened off of the highway at close to 100 miles an hour into the parking lot and struck Lisa and me before we even knew what was happening. Gary and his wife escaped death by only a few feet. I woke up in a hospital 3 days later. I had a tube in my mouth and couldn't speak. I gestured to an elderly nurse for a pencil and paper. "How is my wife?" I wrote. The nurse took my hands in hers, kissed it, and shook her head no. "Your wife didn't survive the crash." Everything went black. Hours later, I reawakened. After another week in the hospital and 3 more weeks in a rehabilitation facility, I was released and went home. Without my wife, it wasn't a home. It was just an apartment filled with memories of happier times. We must have made love in every square inch of that tiny apartment, because the memories flooded back whenever I looked at some horizontal and more than a few vertical spaces that we had been intimate on. I knew that I had to move out as soon as my strength returned. The driver who killed my wife was on trial for manslaughter. I attended the trial and testified against him. I learned that this was his 3rd drunk driving accident. He had previously injured 2 other people in previous drunken accidents. I assumed the judge would throw the book at him. One day, during the trial, I ate lunch at a pleasant cafe across the street and saw the judge and the prosecutor throwing back more than 4 martinis each. They were each as big a lush as the murderous driver. The jury found the driver guilty. Later, the judge and the prosecuting attorney, feeling lenient towards another drunk, sentenced him to 2 years of probation. I jumped up from my seat, screaming at the judge, and was taken from the courtroom by a bailiff. This man destroyed my wife and my life, and since the courts wouldn't make him pay, I was an accountant and I lived by the rule that you must balance the books. I wasn't worried about getting caught and going to prison. I had no reason to live. I also realized that by killing that drunk driver, I might be saving the lives of others. I waited in my car in the parking lot. When the defendant left the court, I followed him home at a discreet distance. The next morning, I waited outside his home and followed him to work. He was a lawyer. His car insurance paid me a fortune, and since I was still in a lot of pain, I took an extended leave of absence from work. On Saturdays, he drove to a country club and played golf. I was shocked when I saw the judge and prosecutor from the case walking into the same club along with the defendant. The 3 of them played golf together. That's when I understood that the fix was in from the beginning, and that's why the murderous driver walked away from any punishment. Justice may be blind, but I'm not. After their round of golf was over, they crossed the street to the parking lot as they waited for the valets to bring them their cars. That would be their killing ground, I decided. Gilbert and Sullivan wrote an operetta with the song, "Let the punishment fit the crime." That became my mantra. I'm an excellent shot with a shotgun, handgun, or rifle, but I chose to ignore that as a means of revenge. I drove to East LA, and from a street filled with cars wearing for sale signs, I bought an ancient junker car, 1958 Plymouth, like in the Stephen King novel, Christine. It must have been fate. I paid cash and didn't register the car to my name. I wore a COVID mask, floppy hat, and sunglasses. I spoke with a thick New York accent, since I always used surgical gloves and a hat when in the car. There were no fingerprints or hair follicles to connect it to me. I named the car Christine after the murderous car from a Stephen King novel. I was careful not to eat food or leave any of my DNA in the car. I bought an electric scooter for cash from some kid off of Craigslist and placed it in Christine's trunk. Though I didn't give Gary or his wife all the details, they agreed to give me an alibi this next Saturday afternoon. Then they both hugged me. As Saturday approached, I drove to Gary's, gave him my cell phone to show I was there all afternoon if the police were to check its location at some time. He agreed to make several phone calls from my phone during the day. Then he drove me home, allowing me to keep my regular car at his house. I put on my COVID mask, a long blonde-haired wig, sunglasses, and a floppy hat and drove to the country club where I waited. When the drunk driver, the assistant DA, and the crooked judge walked across the street for their cars, I revved the engine, popped the clutch, and drove into them at 60 miles an hour screaming, "Lisa, this is for you." The judge flew over the roof of my car. The lawyer was on the hood, and the drunk drive was under my tires. I drove about 5 miles away to a place I knew had no surveillance cameras. I left the car, retrieved the electric scooter, and rode it down the Venice Beach bike path 10 miles to Gary's house. I looked at teenagers on the beach and remembered my time on the beach with Lisa, with tears in my eyes. 4 hours later, I was at my house when the police arrived to ask me questions. The judge and drunk driver were dead. The assistant DA was paralyzed. The police had a warrant for my cell phone and house. They searched the house. Actually, they tore it apart, but found nothing incriminating. I gave them my alibi. They arrested me anyway and took me to the station. I stayed alone in a cold interrogation room for several hours before I was interviewed. I refused to answer any questions other than telling them where I was at the time of the accident. They told me that if I confessed, they would go easier on me. I remained silent. They refused to let me leave until I demanded to call my lawyer, who was Gary's brother. The police had no evidence against me and had to release me. For the next week, I could tell that I was being tailed, and then it stopped. I took my car to an automotive repair garage where the mechanic discovered GPS tracker hidden under the car near the exhaust. I hired an electronics expert to discreetly sweep my house and phones for bugs. When the police searched my house, they apparently planted bugs in the bedroom and kitchen. Twice more I was taken to police headquarters for questioning. Each time I invoked my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and my right to an attorney. Someone sent anonymous tip to several newspapers and TV news departments explaining that the judge and assistant DA were dirty. They were actually friends of the drunk driver. They let go without punishment. It became a major scandal. The assistant DA was fired and disbarred. The police stopped harassing me. I was besieged by news crews in front of my house. I brought out coffee and pastries for them. I sat in a lawn chair and refused to answer any questions. I did, however, make a statement that karma caught up with this man and his enablers who had killed or injured 3 people and balanced these books. That was 5 years ago. I travel to Las Vegas a few times a year and hire Kimmy, an escort who looks remarkably like Lisa, to take care of my physical story needs. Sometimes we aren't even intimate, and I just hold her in my arms and cry for an hour. I don't date except to visit Lisa's grave at least once a month. It wouldn't be fair to any woman I met, since she couldn't possibly take the place in my heart that Lisa will always have. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe the channel for daily stories.
Thanks for listening. Share your opinion in comment section, and also do like and subscribe to the channel.